Hi everyone, welcome. We're out here in my garden, and this is my outdoor worm bin. This outdoor worm bin is occupied by mainly red wigglers, but I also got some European night crawlers in here. And this bin originally started as a test to see how the worms would do if they were kept outdoors all winter, and they did great. They didn't mind at all. I must admit I did freak out a couple times, and I did take the bin indoors here and there just during certain times when it seemed like it was going to become exceedingly cold for too many days. I didn't want these little guys to freeze. But other than that, they did great, and I'm sure they would have done fine if I had just left them there. But you know, I didn't want it to get so cold that they might just begin exiting the bin. But that was months and months ago. We're now at the end of July, and we've been having quite a heat wave, and today is the first day when we've got temperatures down in the 70s, and I think it's going to remain pretty cool today, so that's a welcome change. And even though it's nice and cool today and comfortable outside, it has been raining all night, and there is a threat of rain for the rest of the day. But right now there's a little break in the rain, so I figured I'd come out here really quick because it's been a week since we last checked in on this bin, and at that time we didn't bring any food out here. We can already see I've got a little tub of food for these guys to give them today. Last time these guys got fed was 2 weeks ago, and at that time I took what was almost a half of a watermelon and simply placed it into the bin here and let them go to town. When we last checked in, we saw a huge pit showing how much they'd already excavated out of the watermelon, and there was still a little bit of watermelon left in there, most of the rind and a little bit of the red fleshy part of the watermelon. But I got a feeling that after another week they might have done away with what was given to them, or at least the majority of it. So I'm prepared to give them a nice little bucket of food here. It's stuff that came out of the crisper in the refrigerator, stuff that had gone bad, and the stuff's got pretty pungent odor. I don't know if you ever smelled broccoli when it goes bad, or mushrooms when they go bad, but they're pretty stinky. I'm not fond of the smell, that's for sure, but I think the worms are going to really enjoy it. So I'm going to move this stuff all aside here so we can get the camera in a little bit closer to see. And since I had a pretty tempting food item in here, I was not trusting that these coverings would be enough. I figured with a half a watermelon in here, I'm best off covering this thing a little bit better to make sure no scavengers try getting in here to get at the watermelon. So I actually had an upside down trash pail covering this entire container, but I'm wondering if I really need to go to those measures anymore. I could probably just leave it out now. And if it rains, then it's okay. It gets a little bit of moisture, which is a good thing. I didn't think that there'd be an absence of moisture with the watermelon being placed in here. So we can see a little bit of a divot here, which would suggest that ongoing consumption of the watermelon that was in here is continuing, and that's not surprising. And very nice castings all over the top, as well as a couple worms hanging out. The castings have a really awesome texture to them, you know. This is the way you want your worm castings to flake apart when you touch them. I do recall also, besides the food being in here, putting a pretty good coating of leaves across the top here. I'm wondering if this is really just what remains of those leaves. It must be, because it's all castings. So it seems like whatever little, you know, topping of bedding I placed in here for them, maybe there's some signs of it here, some leafy matter remaining. But you could tell there's really virtually no signs of it in here, so maybe it would make good sense to supplement the bedding again, put some fresh leaves on top once again. Maybe that's just a signal to me that they need a little bit more carbon in their diet, and I could do that. I can grab another handful of leaves from the pile over here next to me against the fence. So it does seem like they're craving it, or at least they're doing away with it quickly when they get some. What have we here? More of it. Okay, so a little bit more remnants of the leafy matter that was placed in here as top cover for the melon. So they've not done away with all of it, but there was quite a bit piled in, if I remember correctly. But as we start working our way down, I'm questioning whether I'm even going to see the rind, or at least see it as a single item anymore. I guess there's always the chance that they didn't gobble it all up yet, but who knows? Well, okay, I think we're finally getting deep enough that we're seeing signs of the melon. And you know, after 2 weeks, I gotta say, it's a little bit surprising to see that the watermelon still has this much red, meaty, fleshy part of the melon remaining. Obviously there's worms hanging out right next to it, all around it, gobbling it up gradually. But I really expected this to be gone much more quickly. I'm actually a little bit surprised to still see red bits and pieces of the melon over here. And you can see how deep I've gone in this pit already here. It's got to be about 4 or 5 inches here at least. So they've cleared out this melon rind quite nicely, with the exception of a little bit of leftover inside. I wonder if we can just sort of get a better view of what's happening here. So what used to be a full melon rind at this point seems like it's just a little leftover. Even got like the stem of the watermelon down here. And it seems like they've actually crawled in between the fleshy matter, the fleshy part of the watermelon and the rind. So for whatever reason, they're really enjoying that area. It's got a good sized lump of worms hanging out there, which is kind of cool to see. I'm going to set these guys aside and cover them back up. Maybe we'll just put them right back where we found them in a few minutes. Just wondering what else we're going to find in here. You know, I mean, when I look at it over here, all these leftover leaves, it does seem like we've actually got a fair bit of remaining bedding here, so it might not be necessary to supplement what's in here already. It might be adequate just to throw in some more food for them. But I can now feel that I'm actually at the bottom of this container, all the way at the bottom of the bag now. Down here too, we're encountering nice quantities of worms mixed into this material. And everywhere I look in this material, I've got stuff that's really nice and flaky no matter where I go. I don't find anything that's overly damp and clumping together, like if it were muddy. Kind of makes me wish all of my worm bins were like this. The one bin where you would maybe expect things to be a little bit unwieldy because it's outdoors all the time, you actually find the nicest castings. So I guess I don't have much of a good reason for digging this deep other than my curiosity as to how things look down low in the bin. To my surprise, they look really awesome. Can't complain, that's for sure. Alright, so I don't want to go too deep. It's certainly not necessary to bury the food this low. So I think underneath I'm going to put in at least a handful of fresh bedding. So I just grabbed as much as I can get into one hand. Pile of leaves. And I think they're going to appreciate that, because the food that they're getting is mainly a rich nitrogen source, and the carbon is a good balance for that. So now I'm just thinking, grab whatever's here and dump it right in. Pew! It's got to be the broccoli that smells like that. It smells like I'm down at the docks where the fishermen chop up their fish. Ugh, you ever go to the docks and you ever smell that? All that rotting fish? Well, it's kind of what this rotting broccoli smells like. Or maybe it's the mushroom. I actually think it might be the mushroom. If I'm not mistaken, mushroom is what has that really pungent smell when it starts to rot. So I'm not going to play around with it too much. I don't want to transfer that stinky smell to my hands. So let's see, we're going to take some of this bedding we located here. Well, it looks like we've actually covered up most of the bedding that I excavated with castings. So here's a little bit. What's this? Oh. I can feel something on my wrist. It looks like a little tiny baby worm has made their way onto my wrist. Talk about tiny. This has got to be a totally newborn baby worm. Let's get him back down into the bin. Come on, buddy. Get off my finger. Okay. And, well, let's not forget about this yummy morsel of food over here. We'll just put that center stage right on top. I'm concerned now. I'm wondering if the worms are going to be bothered by the fact that what's right below them is just a pile of frozen food. If they do crawl off the melon and end up down there, they're going to get a little bit of a chill. But I think they'll do fine. If they don't like it, they'll just keep moving and get off of it. So now before we backfill all of this here, I've also got my little trusty bag of eggshell that's been pulverized to a nice fine consistency. Sometimes I'll take my pulverized eggshell and bring it outside so that I can get all of this this inner skin. These larger chunks are that inner skin of the eggshell, and that's the stuff that just kind of blows away with the wind. So sometimes I take my crushed eggshells and allow the wind to blow over it, try to get rid of all that excess stuff, so I'm really left with only pulverized eggshell. But for the outdoor bin, I don't go so crazy trying to come up with such fine material, so this crushed eggshell does look a little different from what you might be used to seeing in my videos. It's just not as cleansed as what I usually use down in my wormery. And so now I guess we'll just begin backfilling. A couple things that I did stumble on while we were working our way down was this stem of a pumpkin, which is really making some good progress. I can almost just crush it in my hands, but I'd rather see it deteriorate by the worms. Here too I've got this cork that's been in my bins for some time now, and it's just finally getting to the stage where it's softening up and getting such that I can chip away at it and break it, which I didn't really expect to have happen. I almost felt like it would just indefinitely remain in one piece, but when I was able to chip off a little chunk of it, I was pleasantly surprised that even that was getting broken down here in the worm bin, so that was kind of interesting. So now I guess we'll just start backfilling gently here. We'll probably start seeing some of that leafy matter that we pulled out of the hole, and we'll just spread that across the top once again like we had earlier. Since the worms that come up to the surface, they'll probably appreciate having some leafy matter right there to enjoy to eat while they're coming up for a quick visit to the surface. So yeah, I definitely like the way this bin is progressing. The material in it is just so perfect throughout, the moisture level. I just wish there was some way for me to replicate this downstairs in my wormery. So now I'm just going to make sure we don't have any more little hitchhikers here on my hands before we start covering up. It looks like I've managed to return all the little wormies to their bin. So we're just going to continue covering up here. I had debated not using this plastic going forward, because down in my wormery, using this plastic has resulted in material that's just been overly damp without the ability for the material to evaporate. But here it's doing terrific. Maybe it's because the excess moisture is able to just leave this fabric bag. So it's just interesting to see how nice it's doing, and I'm very pleased. So I'm going to get this whole shebang covered up here and put away before the rain returns. So I'm glad that it held out long enough for us to be able to come out here and check in on these little guys, see how they're coming along with that watermelon. I'm guessing that another week goes by, we're probably not going to see much, if anything, of that watermelon, but that's not surprising. We got quite a number of worms in here, and for them to go through half a watermelon in 2 weeks seems perfectly normal. So I'm not even sure if it's going to be necessary to check in on this in another week, because that amount of food that we just gave them did seem pretty plentiful. I might be able to let this bin go now for a week or two. In the past, I've typically allowed this bin just to go without checking in on it very regularly. The only reason we've been coming in here more frequently lately is because of that melon. We've been wanting to see how it's progressing. So I'm gonna leave it at that. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. I hope you did. If you did, please remember to give me a quick thumbs up. It's always really appreciated. And if you haven't already done so, please also consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit that subscribe button, even ring the bell if you want to get notified of new content coming online. This way you'll be notified, hopefully. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.